Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team, and this week, a special guest. Joining me is Ramon.
Hey guys.
And this week, very exciting, we have on a special guest, Ralf, to talk about Fathomless Gears.
Hello!
Yes, and if this is your first time listening to the Win with Dice podcast, hey, thanks for clicking on our video. That's super awesome of you. Hopefully, if it's your first time hearing about Fathomless Gears, it'll be a really cool interview. But yeah, on this podcast, we like to talk about the games that we run, the games that we play, and the cool, wonderful people, and the cool, wonderful games, and I guess designers and stuff now too, of the hobbies that we love. If this is your first time kind of hearing about any game that we talk on this channel, or, Pathfinder, Starfinder, Lancer, any of those other games that we talk about, hey, go find some friends, go find some dice, and go have some fun. And if you are a player at someone's table and you've never GM'd before, like, hey, give your GM a break and give it a whirl. It's really fun, really rewarding, and your table will definitely enjoy whatever you put down for them to play.
Indeed. So this week we are going to be getting into the game Fathomless Gears, featuring mechs diving into the deep ocean, having to contend with giant fish creatures, and the calls of the deep burrowing into their minds. I don't know, I think it's very cool, and I'm very excited to get into it.
For sure.
But first off, we have to get to the most important part of the show, the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week.
Yes, the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week. Brought to you by Ralf. Thanks, Ralf.
Yeah, I got a cool tip. It's often said, but in my experience, people don't really follow it. It's that sometimes communication is just key. And as a GM, sometimes we get caught with our pants down. And I think it's okay to just level with your group in those moments and say, I haven't prepped that. Maybe we could reconvene next week. Something like, just be adults about it and level with each other and talk it out.
Yeah, honestly, that's so true. And you're right. Not a lot of people, including myself, do that. I normally just try and wing it. And I always regret it a little bit afterwards. Like, man, if I had put a couple hours in the back, or give me 24 hours or the next day or whatever, I could have come up with something better. But, you always trust your gut. You're like, oh, I'll do it. But yeah, sometimes it is such a good call to just be like, hey guys, that's a super cool idea. Let me work on it and then we'll get back to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, especially if you're playing with other people who have run games before, I think it'll be easier for them to, get that. But yeah, even just buying yourself a few minutes to deal with an issue or something that comes up, or a plot twist that you as the game master didn't see coming. I have been on the player side of the table when something like that happened, where we literally broke reality itself in the game. And the GM was just like, okay, I need a few minutes to figure out the consequences of your actions right now.
Yeah, it's not like any regular player would be mad at that, right? It's yeah, of course.
I would say too, if you all the players out there, if you have the inkling that you've done something that the GM has not prepared for, and that might be something like breaking reality, you know what I mean? Something extremely derailing to their plans. Hey, maybe you could call it out yourself, being like, hey, do you need some time? We're cool to call it here or something like that. I do it quite often, especially with new GMs, because you haven't built up that skill of knowing when to maybe I should hold the brakes, because you don't want to stop the fun, right? But you also you could definitely tell when they're out of depth for a little bit, right?
Yeah, for sure. You definitely want to recognize those moments. And sometimes it's fun to go with the flow, right? Just come up with a wacky solution on the spot, but that's not necessarily always the correct call, so to speak. And I guess as a GM, you have to also be experienced enough to recognize the difference between the two.
Yeah, right. Knowing when to riff with what the scenario is, or knowing when those important narrative beats need to be hit, and how to realign to get back to what you're trying to accomplish, or what the story requires, so things don't fall flat or a little bit out of character of the story that you're telling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I don't know, Kevin, do you have anything else to add?
No, I mean that's exactly it. You just, from the player side, definitely you just need to have that patience as well, because everybody wants something cool to happen, but sometimes the person running the game needs just they need a minute.
For sure. So yeah, there you go, folks. Like Calvin said, I don't really need to recap this one because you did such a good job.
All right, well then let's hop into the episode. Ralf, very exciting to have you on, because I do really like the Lancer Enhanced Combat book. I'm pretty sure I've talked about it a handful of times on here. So for people who might not know you or might not know what you've worked on, how would you, I guess, introduce yourself to someone new or introduce your work?
Well, I'm a Ralf Interpoint, Enhanced Combat, Dustgrave, Fathomless Gears Ziegler. That is my full name. I keep adding on to it as my portfolio grows. But yeah, I'm a professional GM. I think that's my main job. I started GMing Lancer 5 years ago. Been doing more or less 6-7 games a week. Right now it's only 5 games a week. I'm growing weaker as the years go by. But 2 years.
Putting it.
2 years into doing that, I was approached by Tom Lancer, who asked me to write a module for the game, which ended up being Dustgrave. And after that, my next writing project was Enhanced Combat, which is a supplement for Lancer. Just basically what it says on the tin, in that it enhances Lancer combat with more sit reps and NPCs and stuff. Been working on a map creation tool for Lancer on the side. And now I've written my own TTRPG, which is Fathomless Gears. Yeah, that's about it.
When you say professional GM, do you mean like are you being paid to GM games on like Start Playing or on like Start Playing site or something like that?
No, I have a very, very weird model. I have a Westmarch server where anybody can play in the sessions that I offer. And I have a Patreon. I'm very grateful to my patrons who support the Interpoint project. And they get little perks like custom tokens in the Roll20 games that we play and that sort of stuff. So the support is mostly voluntary. Some 2 or 3 years ago, we had to introduce like a rule that after you reach LL12, which is the max level of Lancer, you then loop around, if you play a 13th game, back to LL0, just like prestiging. And then you get exotic equipment.
Ooh.
But if you wanna keep playing and buy games after that, then you have to become a patron of any tier, which starts as little as $5, so it's not too bad.
Yeah.
And then because it's a big West Marches community server with like a bunch of people, there's a bunch of community games as well going on at all times. And those are always going to be free. So yeah, that's sort of my main gig. And then I started writing.
Nice. Yeah, that's super cool. That's like a lot of gaming happening.
It is, but it's a professional GM thing, right? But it's a weird payment model, I guess. That's not really.
It's not efficient for you, but it definitely is fun for everybody else.
Yeah,
I would say.
That's true.
Right.
That's what counts, baby.
Yeah, man. No, that's cool. That's awesome. I mean, like obviously I've read and we've covered the stuff you've written for Lancer, and we're big fans of all the books, especially the Enhanced Combat. I think it's like you have some of the coolest NPCs that every time I see them, I'm like, man, I wish I wasn't so weak to run Lancer. I mean, Ralf, you're saying you're weak going from 7 to 5. Man, I haven't ran a Lancer game in like years, and I'm just like, Every time I think about it, I'm like, It's not like I'm not excited for it, but just like it's like the color leaves my body, and it's like the amount of work I have to put in is so much.
Yeah,
I'll
be honest. I'll look back 5 years ago when I started the project, like of the West Marches server, and the way I had to wrangle everything before I like made the tools to make it easier, like the map creation tool. It's like I don't know that I have it in me if I had to go back today to do all that again.
Yeah, right.
Also, I can take all the credit actually. Big thanks to all the community members who have helped out throughout the years with like a bot that picks out players weekly and macro imports from CompCon into Roll20 just to make setup so much easier. And that is all coming from the community to help me out, which is it's nuts. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. I mean, low-key, like, you're giving them a lot of your time for free. But, like, I think everyone gets to, like, have fun in that kind of, like, collaborative way. So, yeah, like I mentioned before, your service model is super customer-friendly. I would say they're getting a lot for the money that they're putting in. So, I don't know. If you guys haven't, I don't know, I guess signed up for Interport Station's Discord or, Ralph's Patreon, I think that you are, mistaken. You should, like, you can spend that dollar anywhere you want. I mean, I think you'll get a lot of it out of there. You know what I mean? I don't know, Calvin, bring us back on track. Like,
I didn't want to interrupt. Yeah, there will also, of course, be links to everything in the description below if you are on YouTube. So definitely check out those links. But yes, I suppose we should talk about Fathomless Gears. Although I did want to give a quick shout out to, there was one thing in the Lancer Enhanced Combat book that kind of has stuck with me. One of the effects, the heroic adversary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where...
That one has the sauce. Like, I was like, yes, this is apparently exactly what I was envisioning every single time I yelled at my players for being heroes. Like,
yeah, especially with Ramon, who loves to do the players are the villains from the villain's perspective sort of thing.
They always are, because most of the people are just trying to do their jobs. Like, they just signed up, they got into the mech, they're getting their paycheck, and then these assholes show up and blow up their house, like, with all their stuff.
That
like,
job being piracy or stealing water.
Listen.
But no, I just wanted to mention that I really like the heroic adversary, this one random NPC that suddenly becomes an elite NPC through the course of a combat and then becomes a more difficult enemy. I just really like that idea. And, I would also want to use that in other games just because, sometimes there's a guy who's left, there's a skeleton with 4 hit points that no one's able to take down. And maybe there should be a mechanical effect for that one annoying guy.
Yeah. I really like the flavor text for that one, by the way.
Yes.
It's probably one of the most favorite ones in that book.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I just had to really point that out specifically. I'll throw a link to that below as well. But let's get into Fathomless Gears, specifically what it is, because I think it has an interesting setting. It has a very interesting mech building system that I do want to talk about. But first off, for people who might not know, what is Fathomless Gears?
Well, Fathomless Gears is a mech fishing, tactical combat, TTRPG with sort of eldritch Lovecraftian vibes baked in. Because, if you're at the water already, if there's tentacles, then that's sort of a given.
Yeah.
Heavily inspired by Lancer, of course, because if you spend 5 years of your life doing nothing but Lancer, then it's sort of a given. War Machine, the wargame, also a big influence. And Dredge to some extent, the video game Dredge. Though, it's definitely influence. People sometimes overstate how much of an influence it is, but no, I like Dredge.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. I was like, what? I had to Google it. I was like, what is Dredge? I think, is that the boat one? And then it's like, yes, it is.
That's the boat one.
Cool. Yes. That one's pretty cool, actually. I like that idea. Yeah, I think that's because it's drawing from the same sources, definitely. So that's why it's like, this book is Mecha Dredge. I'm assuming that's what people are saying.
Yeah, and in Dredge, there's a mechanic where your boat also has a grid, and to maximize your fishing gains, you have to slot in the Tetris piece-shaped fishes. So that's also sort of a similar vibe. Fishing and Tetris, they just go together. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I guess because you only can fit so much on a boat or, aquatic stuff, right? Like, you don't have the freedom to just drop it on the ground. So the idea of, maximizing the space that you can carry shit has always been a boating thing. So actually, everyone else is wrong. This is just human history. You know what I mean? Tetris always existed in boats ever since they invented it. So there you go.
Just comes with the territory.
It comes with the territory, right?
So yeah, what about the setting of Fathomless Gears then? If you could describe that a bit, because you have touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, the setting is a sort of World War I era diesel punk fantasy sort of deal. Very much inspired by the Dishonored universe, which is sort of going in the same direction, where there is an industrial revolution going on because humanity figured out how to extract oil from the hideous, monstrous fish that live in the oceans of their world, Halcyon. And this galvanic oil is ringing in a new age with galvanic engines powering ships and these bipedal machines called gears, which are heavily featured in the game, of course, because mechs are just cool.
Yep.
True.
So yeah, and that's sort of the reason why we have to catch so much fucked up fish because we needed to fuel the industry, basically. That's why our brave players venture out into the ocean and get ripped to shreds.
Yeah, it's like we have to you have to fuel the mechs to go get the stuff so you can fuel the mechs, and then all of a sudden you're just like in a cycle because everyone's like, we don't know how to do anything else right now, so we're just gonna keep sending people down there to the spooky parts.
Yeah, basically.
And then you have to
Nice.
contend with the deep while you're beneath there.
Yeah, it's rough down there. The book sort of points out how it's not a great job, but it's the job that needs done right now.
I mean, I don't know. I think that you get to be in some cool, awesome designed mechs, which are like half construction equipment, half diving suit. Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's true. You get to ride a mech.
Yeah, I do want to touch on the game mechanics, but since we are talking about the mechs, I want to talk about the art. Because I think the art in the book is really good, but the mech examples especially, like the chassis pages, was that the same artist who did each chassis?
Yes, all the gear chassis images are done by Hua Min-young, who is very talented, incredibly talented. Was one of the first artists I approached actually for the book. And he did the Lone Star first, and that really informed a lot of what the other artists would be doing afterwards, and sort of what the art direction would be going towards.
So when he drew the Lone Star, like what was the back and forth? Like what was the communication on that? Did it just come out sort of exact the first time, or was there a discussion on how it should look and how it should fit?
No, he nailed it the first time. We had some revisions on other gears, but I just said I need an underwater fishing mech with a freaking harpoon. This is what they delivered, and we went from there. We just banked out all 12 of them.
Nice. I love that. It's like, yep, that's it. Right? Like, yep.
Yeah,
that's it.
basically, the ones that were heavily revised were the Pridemore, which is the one with the ears, because getting the ears right was a bit of a hassle because they couldn't be too high tech for the setting. They started out as like radar dishes, like super modern ones.
Yeah.
And now they're actually inspired by World War I pre-radar aircraft reconnaissance, where it's literally it's like an exact picture if you look at the Pridemore. But during World War I, there was a guy sitting behind them with headphones, and then they would listen literally for airplanes coming in. Ridiculous.
Wow.
But super cool.
Yeah, we've advanced so much since then. Like, that's wild, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 100 years, right? Basically.
Yeah,
It's
sometimes
nuts.
I forget that like planes were actually just made out of wood for a lot of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, yeah.
it's wild, but it's cool. I also love that he just has a pistol. It's just like,
Yeah. Well, that's how you know it's a support gear, right? It's time for the big
right?
guns.
Like, wow. Better watch out. I'm gonna get you. Yeah, this is super cool. So I guess the Lone Star would be the first mech designed, or was this the first mech commissioned?
No, it was the first mech designed.
Yeah, okay.
And then in the lore, it's also the first mech, so it sort of works out. Then everything got sort of based around the Lone Star art-wise. We did the first of each manufacturer, so we did one of each manufacturer first. So Lone Star, Lamprey, Buccaneer, and Rhombus. And then we just went from there, with each manufacturer getting the 3 gears.
Yeah, I like how each of them have their own different vibes. Like the piratey ones, they feel a bit more cobbled together. They feel a bit more bulky.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really cool. But yeah, let's talk about the game itself. How is this game played? And then we'll get into like character creation and gear creation.
So it's a grid-based tactical combat is very much the focus of the game. Because frankly, if you have a mech, that's the most fun, right? The combat. You don't just want to have it in a garage and look at it. Want to take it out and beat up fish, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
But the grid-based combat is definitely the focus, with tokens being moved around, and the damage system is pretty unique for this game, but I think we could probably better talk about that during construction, in that everything is basically made up of Tetris blocks, and it's really when you build your character, you build your mech in this game, it's really gonna be your mech. It's unlikely that you'll find another player with exactly the same layout. It's not a D20 system, it's a 2d6 system because I love bell curves. So attack rolls are 2d6 plus stat versus stat. And you move around, you coordinate with your brace. Brace is the group noun for a group of fishers, I learned when I started writing this. So your group is called the brace. Yeah, there's different roles. You got a slayer, which has the job of weakening and killing fish. You've got a reeler, which has to reel in the fish and ultimately catch them once they're weakened enough. You've got a support, which sort of... They do support. They buff, they sometimes debuff fish. They scan the fish so you know what you're up against. And then we got the hook artist. Okay, not the hooker, the hook artist.
I was going to ask because the rest are like,
of course.
reeler, slayer. I guess support isn't a ER thing, but...
Listen, if I had called the role the hooker, I would have never heard the end of it, okay? So it's a hook artist.
Fair enough.
And their job is to apply the hook condition, which is a very pivotal mechanic of the game, to the fish. So they throw harpoons at the fish, or they use literal giant mech-sized fishing hooks to tear into the creatures and secure them on lines so that the reeler can reel them in.
Interesting. I like that you split it up. Yeah, because I was like... Because I thought when the reeler would be also the person who would attach the hook, but that's like a fully separate job in the crew. Interesting.
So you can build your, so there's no classes in this game, right? There's no at character selection. I select a class. It's all free form and dependent on how you build your gear. Because I think when it comes to like mech stuff, customization is king. So you can give there's nothing that prevents your reeler from picking up a hook weapon, like a harpoon or a hook. In fact, it's probably pretty good if they do, but due to them having to invest into reeling stuff so much, it will be harder for them to invest into good hooking stuff, which is why a dedicated hook artist is usually a good idea.
Right, so just like by the naturality of like the system itself with the limitations, like people just specialize on their own because game mechanics be game mechanics, right?
Correct, yeah, basically you really have to coordinate when building your gears with your teammates to build a coherent brace, basically.
Yeah, I do like that the game is sort of more explicit about the roles than other games may be. Like there is bleed over. You can build into one thing or another and have some equipment that works with both. But I like that you sort of describe, like, here are different things that you may want to do if you are creating your group as a team up front.
For sure. You can go theoretic. So in theory, you could go without assigning any roles to a team and just throw stuff together, because the basic actions, so every mech of course has basic actions they can do independent from their stuff they got installed, and those cover everything. Like you can put the hook condition with an action called wrangle, and you just wrangle the fish into submission and put a hook on it, but that's infinitely worse than just picking up a harpoon and throwing it at a fish. I guess we should say that it's an AP system where every action costs a set amount of AP. Gears have a set amount of AP to play with, and then there's gear internals called engines, which increase that amount until 6 AP is the max, because during playtest we learned that players just can't count past 6. And sometimes they can't even do that, but we got there.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
Fair.
It's funny how things shake out in playtests where you're just like, what?
It's also for balancing reasons, of course, but it's a funnier story. Well, it's not. To be fair, it's not that easy. All right, you do your actions, and then have to keep your APs in your head. It's tough. So six ended up being a good number.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
The more resources you have to keep track of, the harder it would be, I imagine. So.
For sure.
What about character creation? Because you have like with other mech games, you have your pilot and you have your machine. The pilot stuff feels more, I guess, narrative-based. Like you have these labels you apply to your characters that sort of describe what they are in their history.
Yeah, so the narrative stuff is very freeform, where at character creation, your pilot gets a couple stats that influence their combat mechanics, which is mostly their mental fortitude and mental attack ability. Because, of course, there's scary fish out there that mentally attack by being scary. And there's also some abilities that the fishers have that are mental attacks where they sort of outwit and outmaneuver the fish, playing mind games. So those stats are chosen basically at character creation for the fisher. And other than that, the fisher chooses these labels you mentioned, which are then invoked during narrative portions to basically roll more dice and then roll better and succeed in harder checks, depending on how many of their labels they were able to invoke, what the GM let them get away with.
Right.
And the gear creation or the mech creation, which I think is probably the feature of this game that stands out the most to me. It's like this grid-based system where you attach these different... I should let you describe it instead of going on, but...
Well, sadly, we can't throw up a picture, right?
We can throw up a picture on YouTube. I can take a screenshot of the GearWrite app, just so people see what it looks like. Or I can use maybe an image from the book so people see what the gears, or the gear looks like. So now, dear listener, look at the screen now. Swoosh.
There it is. The magic of editing. But yeah, the GearWrite is, I would call it pretty much necessary to play the game, because nobody wants to bust the graph paper and do this manually. I know, because when we didn't have GearWrite yet at the very beginning of playtest, like start of last year, it was rough, man. People were putting together their mechs in Excel sheets. We don't want that. Anyway, your mech is divided into 5 sections, sort of vaguely humanoid shaped, with a big 6x6 grid torso, a 6x3 arms, a 3x6 leg section, and a 3x3 head section. As I said, vaguely arranged in a humanoid shape. And then each in these grids, they're called hardpoints. Each different gear has a different hardpoint configuration initially, with locked hardpoints and unlocked hardpoints. Unlocked hardpoints is what you want to look for to install your internals, which are the items, the weapons, the engine, the optics, suspension, stride jets, guns, melee weapons, repair shields, line linkers, winches for reeling, armor plates. It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you like mechs, you'll probably like this. And then as you level up, and at the start of your career, you get to unlock a certain amount of locked hardpoints on your gear, which in turn allows you, for one, to install larger internals, just because you have more available space. But then also, each unlocked hardpoint acts as your HP during combat, because during combat, if an attack hits you, damage is assigned to one of those section grids, which is randomly determined, which is why these little numbers are underneath each section. So a fish hits an attack, the fish rolls 2d6 to see where it hits. If it rolls 2 or 3, it hits the head. If it rolls 4 to 5, left arm 6 to 8, torso, right arm 9 to 10, legs 11 to 12. And of course, because it's a 2d6, that means we got a bell curve going on again. And hitting the head or the legs is much less likely than hitting the torso, which is, I think, over 40%. So over 40% of attacks against you will hit your torso, just because it's the middle part of that 2d6 bell curve, which introduces a lot of fun tensions when gear building. Because while you could just unlock all your leg points, that means you stuff a lot of available HP into a section that's not likely to be hit, is the idea. But then maybe you want a big leg internal, like actuators, which increase your evasion, which makes you less likely to be hit. So maybe you don't need those hard points in your chest. It's a lot of of stuff going on. That probably won't be apparent on your first couple fishing trips, but they will become apparent as you sort of interact with the system and build up your gear. And then you go, aha! It's a fun experience.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool. I do also, I think, truthfully, one of the coolest parts is just the images inside of the Tetris pieces are like shaped like the actual thing. And it brings
for sure.
me so much joy to see them slot in. It's like, oh, this is shaped like a gun. And it's
absolutely.
A Tetris piece
And
like
I have to definitely shout out the artist Norgard, who I've been working on Dustgrave with, on Enhanced Combat with. Norgard's my guy, and amazing job, just stellar. The way we did that actually is, before all the pieces had art, I just had the empty pieces, like the shapes. So, and the stat blocks, and I just threw them all at Norgard. And then Norgard had to figure out what best to slap into these shapes. And mostly, we were on the same page, what some of these shapes would end up as. With some of them, he surprised me though, but they ended up like in a positive way. It's like, oh yeah, that could also work. Mainly the beak fish part.
Oh, that part too is like been like seeing like all of the fish guts and stuff, the internals.
Yeah.
It's obviously the fish also have character creation rules, but not like NPC creation rules, but yeah, it's just like I love that blank slate, and I saw all the pieces. I was like, wow, I can shove a lot of crap in here. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
On the Fathomless Gears Discord, there's been sort of a Pokemon trading card thing going on where GMs share fish builds with each other. It's really cool, actually.
Just take the snip. Check this out. You're like, whoa, that's a nasty dude.
Damn, that's fucked up.
Yeah, for sure. I love this. I don't know. I think that like the difference between the fish feeling really, really organic and slimy, and versus the mechs feeling like metally and like grungy, and you feel like the real like tug of war between like the thing that lives in the water and the man trying to get down there to take it away. Right?
Yeah,
like it's sick.
Yeah. Internally, we use the word squelchy for the fish parts. They need to be sufficiently squelchy.
Yeah, that is so accurate. Like, oh my god. Yeah, if people don't ever like handle like fish very often or any sort of aquatic life, they definitely just make that sound effect. Like,
well, yeah, I guess to quickly talk about the fish side of things, the GM preps the fish. The fish also are grids, but just singular grids, except if we go into Leviathan boss monster territory. And the fish are also made up of Tetris blocks. They do not have locked hard points. All fish are inherently unlocked. And then the GM can just build their own fish or pick up some fish examples from the rulebook and throw them at the fishers, which then must shoot at them, and they can snipe out specific internals on the fish if they critically hit, which is they roll 5 higher than the fish's evasion. And that way they can weaken the fish specifically in ways that benefit the players. Like if the players don't want to deal with Maw 3 right now because Maw 3 is really dangerous, then they have the option to just snipe it out. Weakening the fish, making it easier to catch, making it less dangerous. Sort of this attrition thing going on.
yeah, it has I'm gonna probably make a lot of comparisons to Monster Hunter because since that's like a thing that's relatively recent, right? It definitely feels like you're playing like deep sea Monster Hunter. At least from like the character, the fish creation, right? Like you have all these like parts that the players can interact with, and I always find that to be the draw of fighting something big as a player. Like you really want to, and like as a GM too, right? I find that like when you have like a big thing, most times it's just kind of like the stat block. I don't know, deep cut reference, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to remember there's like a really old. Not really old, but it's a comedy kung fu movie, and the the protagonist punched a hole in a dude, and it was like a solid like chunk. There wasn't anything in there, right? And the joke was like, oh my god, you punched a hole through that guy, and it's like, why is it a solid block, right? That's how I feel sometimes when you're fighting big things. It's like when you punch it, it just feels like the insides aren't there, and you can't interact with like a bunch of different parts, right? So it's like,
and
why?
the last HP, it's as strong as the first HP, right? Because it's just
exactly right.
It's just a bar.
Yeah. But like every other depiction of a big thing in media, it's always been like they attack different parts. The monster gets weaker. It's a little bit back and forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. You guys nailed it, I guess. Like you did what I wanted.
A comment that I get a lot that players find refreshing, that the goal of these encounters isn't to kill all the fish, right?
Right.
Because the goal is to catch the fish. So the brace can't roll up with a turbo massacre crew that is only equipped with machine guns and grenade launchers, because then they don't have the capability of catching any fish, and they go home without a payday, effectively, which will bite them in the ass down the line at some point. So people have been enjoying that killing the stuff isn't the primary goal, but that you have to weaken the fish adequately to catch them. You have to specifically snipe out what you don't want the fish to have when it's floundering on the hook. You can't solve everything with just applying more damage to the face, basically.
I do. It's like a different mindset you have to go in as a player in like a tactical game, where it's like it isn't just to bring everything to zero and you go home heroes. It's actually you have to skillfully, be a fisherman and actually bring back the catch, right?
Yep.
Like, anybody can blow up a fish with a big enough gun. You gotta bring most of it back home. You know what I mean? Like intact. Like the better intact it is, the more you're gonna get paid.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that before with other games, how it's kind of just a tendency to focus on, just... I haven't heard the phrase "get it to zero, go home a hero" before. That's completely new to me, but...
we should put that on a shirt, man. That's a good one.
I like that one, yeah. It's good.
But yeah, no, I just like having those extra goals in a combat can be interesting. So, like this game, it seems like it's built around that idea.
Yeah, very much. Definitely. Sometimes, so there's some other bonus objectives you can sprinkle in as a GM. For example, catch a fish that has these specific internals that you can't destroy. Or there's an eldritch obelisk polluting the waters and agitating the fish. You must tear it down. That sort of deal going on as bonus objectives. But the catching of fish is very much the primary idea behind most fishing trips.
Yeah, and that brings in like the narrative system as well.
Yeah, basically.
Hey there, folks. Calvin from The Edit here. Once again, we are splitting this interview up into 2 parts, so that instead of one really long episode, you get a couple of decently sized episodes. 2 for the price of 1, that price being free. So come back next week to hear the rest of this conversation with Ralf about Fathomless Gears. This is a very interesting game. It's very cool. We got a really good look at the character creation process in this episode with a bunch of screenshots. If you are on YouTube, you will have seen a bunch of those. If you're not on YouTube, then feel free to check out the YouTube episode to see those images, as well as just pick up the book yourself and read it all for yourself. There are links to everything below, so check them all out. Again, we're going to continue this next week. In addition, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to catch up with some other stuff we may have missed, such as any news coming out of PaizoCon, which happened very recently. So we'll be getting to that in a couple of weeks. For now, this is just going to be the sign off. As with all of our outros, I want to shout out all the people who are listed and linked below in the video description. If you want to check out some third-party writers and creators for the Lancer RPG, if you want to check out other games like Soar or Dawn or Mechanized Body, there's links to all of that below, as well as checking out other channels like Vault Companions, Masks and Mayhem, and of course, Untold Stories Project. It's a fun group, and they're doing some convention stuff at the Origins Game Fair, so if you're in the Columbus, Ohio area, definitely check that out. But for now, we're ending the episode here, so come back next week for the rest of this conversation, and for all of our GMs and players out there, just remember to keep on winning with dice. And we'll see you next time.